Welcome back. Public Enterprises Minister Pravin Gordhan has welcomed the Constitutional Court judgment on the SARS rogue unit interdict. Last year, the Public Protector found that when Gordhan was SARS Commissioner, he unlawfully constituted a unit to conduct illegal intelligence gathering. Gordhan was then granted an interdict to halt remedial action against him while he took that report on review. The EFF and the Public Protector approached the Constitutional Court to appeal that interdict. So this is quite a complex legal case. Let's unpack it with senior legal journalist Karyn Maughan. Karyn, great to have you with us. Can you take us back and just tell us, firstly, what was the battle between the Public Protector and the Minister Pravin Gordhan that has now played out in the courts? What were the original findings?
Well, I think it's very important to remember here that this entire matter, this issue of the remedial action in the Ivan Pillay retirement matter, in the so-called SARS rogue unit situation, was some of the most acrimonious litigation that we've seen playing out with regard to the Public Protector. In normal circumstances, Francis, when someone gets an interdict staying the implementation of remedial action, that typically is not appealed because the courts will always say, look, it's not the final solution. Pravin Gordhan is bringing this far-ranging challenge to these reports. These issues can be determined later. But what the Public Protector and the EFF said was, no, that for a variety of reasons, staying the implementation of the remedial action, which was basically ordering President Cyril Ramaphosa to take disciplinary action against Pravin Gordhan, would essentially sort of impinge on the constitutional powers of the Public Protector and had to be dealt with by the Constitutional Court. Now, remember the Public Protector at one point trying to withdraw this case and President Cyril Ramaphosa saying, no, it needed to be heard, that the issues and the acrimony around it had to be sorted out. And the court today ultimately saying, no, this was not an issue that should be appealed to it, but making a number of comments and reversing costs orders in this case that were granted against both Advocate Mkhwebane in her personal capacity and the EFF, and sort of without getting into the merits and the toxicity of the matter, making a number of statements about how we as a society need to function in terms of our critiques of each other that are quite interesting in and of themselves.
So essentially, Pravin Gordhan remains in his job now while he can continue to take the matter on review, to say that the Public Protector was wrong in her original findings. Is that correct?
Absolutely. That's essentially what's happened is the Constitutional Court has said, that it was satisfied with the way in which the Pretoria High Court Judge Celeste Potterell made a determination that because of the potential, very damaging, consequences for Pravin Gordhan. Remember, there'd been an order that he be investigated by law enforcement, that he potentially could lose his job or be fired by President Cyril Ramaphosa because of these allegations that, these findings that he was a so-called spy and involved in all kinds of nefarious activities, which of course he disputes. The court's saying today that it didn't see any reason for the Constitutional Court to force, the implementation of that remedial action in circumstances where there was this challenge to the report and that it was satisfied that the High Court was correct to find that there was merit in the challenge. The court also saying, however, that it would not allow a personal costs order against Advocate Mkhwebane to stand. Of course, that was, given against her in her personal capacity, and saying that it did not believe that there had been a factual basis put forward by the court to justify that punishing costs order. Also reversing the cost order granted against the EFF and saying that, however you may question the party's motives, it did raise points that, required scrutiny and should not be hit with an adverse cost order against it in those circumstances.
So those are the minor victories for the Public Protector and the EFF. And interesting, you talk about the courts talking about how we all conduct ourselves. The Constitutional Court there was criticising a High Court.
Well, what's interesting there is that, there was a lot of rhetoric against High Court Judge Celeste Potterell at the time that this judgment came out. The EFF, that it was about the same time that the there'd been, the court had also ruled in favor of Ramaphosa in another matter. There was a lot of conjecture around so-called female judges, and there were a lot of negative comments. So the Constitutional Court today is saying that, courts are open to criticism, but, when you're calling them captured or corrupt, without really any basis for doing so, that is deeply unhelpful. And the courts welcome criticism, but not ad hominem attacks. Second of all, saying that we need to show respect for the office of the public protector, perhaps a reference to some of the very strong language that had been used in this particular application, which was ultimately not dealt with really in this application from the minister about public protector Mkhwebane. He, of course, has made no secret about his feelings that she's not incompetent, that she is incompetent and that, in fact, has adverse motivations. And then also saying that President Cyril Ramaphosa, in not taking action against Pravin Gordhan, pending the determination of this legal action, was also acting appropriately and was not second-guessing the public protector because, he had taken the necessary legal steps in that regard. So very interesting, because we don't see this coming out of our courts a lot at all, Francis.
Yeah.
This kind of, last concluding remarks about how we needed to treat each other with respect, and that criticism needs to be specific and directed. Ad hominem attacks in whatever way they shape or form they find themselves are just not helpful for a constitutional democracy.
So that is very interesting. And then, Karyn, finally, where is Pravin Gordhan's fight, the minister's fight to try and overturn the original findings? Where is that in the courts right now?
Well, at the moment, that is, of course, before the High Court. Having seen that interdict issue finalized, it can now go ahead. And then he will bring the substantive argument that he's made, that this entire investigation was not properly motivated, that his rights were impinged, that he should have been, the public protector made no effort to look at his side of the story on this. He's made a number of conjectures, and it is one of the most sort of serious legal challenges that she will face. She, of course, is in the middle of litigation in the Constitutional Court in order to try and challenge the dismissal or the overturning of her report into President Ramaphosa's key funding. And she's also attempting to challenge the Istina court ruling, both of which may form a very strong basis of any potential inquiry into her fitness to hold office.
All right, thank you very much. That's from senior legal journalist Karyn Maughan.